This is Nate Ramaley with the Central Cannabis Association, and today we are joined with my co-host Phillip Snodgrass and our guests Toby Hayse, Ricky Starling, and Adam McGill.
Guys, how's it going?
Great.
Good.
Great. Very good.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you for being here today. I think we're just going to kick it right off and start talking about medical cannabis in Missouri. Ricky, I understand you know a little bit about this.
I do.
Awesome, man. Well, my main thing is how do you see this working out in Missouri over the next few years?
I think right now we're having, some hiccups. But I feel like if we can get everything implemented correctly, if we can lift the license caps and allow for more license holders to obtain cultivation, processing, or dispensaries, then I think Missouri is going to flow a lot smoother. There's a lot going on right now, and there's just not a lot of opportunity for a lot of people.
Completely understand. Was at the guild meeting for MoCan, and there was a few upset individuals there when the licenses were about to be rolled out. I understand Toby was there as well.
I was. Were you there, Ricky?
No, I wasn't there.
You weren't at Paradise at the.
No.
Okay, gotcha. I think you have a really limited number of cultivation licenses. They issued 60. That number is sort of in flux right now, but no, just barely more than 30 total companies got these cultivation licenses. I don't know why they went for the full corporate model as opposed to having a little more diversity. There's not a single cultivation company committed to growing naturally, organically. They are absolutely all doing basically agribusiness farming. And that's really a shame. I mean, you would hope that a market would have a variety, that we wouldn't just be looking at agribusiness, that we would have some organic, we would have some middle of the road, we'd have some high-tech farms, and that people would be able to get, the sort of medicine they wanted from the company they wanted, as opposed to profit model. And there was just something suspiciously, I don't know if suspicious is the right word, it's not a conspiracy, but it's really hard to quite figure out why the people who had lawyers write their answers all got high marks, and the people who had been growing cannabis for their life's work all got low marks. There's something there. So
awesome. So yeah, that is a shame, and I understand that all of us here are in this industry working toward the goal of legalization, not just for states but also federally. But in Missouri, with the model it currently is, it's kind of disappointing to see how low numbers of manufacturers, dispensary owners, and how it seems to all be kind of an exclusive holdings currently.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And multi-state operators got a fairly large share of the pie. What's the name of the nursery down south?
Sarcoxy.
Sarcoxy was a great example. A family, you might hear, can you sum up the Sarcoxy situation?
Basically they're like, other license holders, they scored high, and, they feel like they're able to obtain the license. And so you've got a whole group of people that are, getting into this. And Thursday we could find out if they're going to get their license, and if they get their license, then that means potentially they're going to lift the caps.
That would be fantastic.
So, but the thing that was so sort of jarring about Sarcoxy is that they were in an economically depressed area. They were a business that had been in the area for generations. They basically fit the exact mold of what you might want for a cannabis business in that they would be good for their community. They were well-known players in their community. They ran a nursery business, which they could almost automatically flip over. It was kind of mind-blowing that if they didn't get a license, like what did it take? So there's the hiccups, I think you said.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes when you hiccup, like you sort of puke. So that may, what exactly are we talking about? But I think that it's going to sort itself out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and the disadvantage that a lot of license holders didn't have is they were having classes put on by an out-of-state entity that were basically coaching these people on, what to put on their application.
An out-of-state entity that was going to end up grading the
exactly. They're out of Nevada
applications.
And gave not everybody, but some people that got a license, it gave them that advantage so that they could put wording in their application. And it was like a sign for that person grading it, like, oh, okay, let's put them through.
Wow. Yeah, that guild event, that was a bloodbath.
Yeah.
And you were there. I mean, Toby, you were there. It was dramatic. Everybody who showed up who didn't get a license was present. And only one group of people, Vertical Enterprises, showed up who got it. And when they said, who all out there got a license? And then Vertical Enterprises was at the bar, turned around and swing their arms up and saw a sea of no other hands up.
Ooh. Yeah, and essentially, like from my perspective, I turned around and saw a bunch of suits put their hands up, and we're all just like, okay, okay.
Oh, I see.
Definitely see how this market's going to go.
This is going. I see how this is going to shake out. So that was, and I don't have any ill will towards anyone. I mean, it takes, but that's the thing that bothered me so much. There was no variety. I think you want some people like that. Suits are fine, but don't make every single business in your licensure. Corporations, there's got to be some mom and pops. I mean, we don't want to skip straight to the Walmart. Let's have a little while where we can have like the 50s in the corner store and stuff before everyone eventually gets consolidated by the Borg.
We just need to get some suits, is what it sounds like, guys.
That seems to be it. It's sort of that Walt Disney effect. You find someone who's really good at it, and you match them with the model behind it, and get things going.
Yep.
I know the medical is kind of taking effect right now, and we saw some sales in Lee Summit go up, and they finally started to be able to, function as a dispensary, which is great. Finally reaching that milestone for a few days.
2 days.
Selling pre-ground eights. Pretty wild. How long do you think before we see adult use sort of merge into the picture?
Honestly, I see within the next year and a half.
It's generally like 2 to 3 years in places that
2 years myself, just because we're so slow to do everything.
I mean, as long as we just can't rush the legislation. Like, we've got to make sure the bill is exactly what we need.
Yeah.
As far as plant counts and that's the worry. Like, we haven't even implemented a medical system yet that's going to work for the patients. There's still some tweaks that we have to do. And so I think personally recreational would be rushing it right now.
Yeah.
And one of the problems with recreational is it's so popular that they can put any crap bill up that they want to, and people, especially if it's an initiative-based situation, they can put any, and people, 60-70% of the people will vote for it. And so that, like you said, we want to be careful about it because so many people will just rush to vote for, oh yeah, I want legal weed, and
right.
And there's a difference between good programs and bad programs. The good ones include a home grow provision, and that because that just encourages all kinds of economic activity on the fringe, grow stores and all the attendant things that go along with that, and the little, it's a cottage industry essentially when you have home grow, and it's just like the tomato model. It doesn't realistically compete with the dispensaries. Still blow up. They still can barely keep. It's just another way that you can produce tax revenues. It's another way that people can get involved in it, and it's for someone like me, it's a way that I can ensure that the product I'm getting is to my standards. And when you're buying it from someone else, it's not necessarily that easy.
For those who may not be familiar, what is Tomato Model?
It's just the idea that the tomatoes, I'm probably saying that Silas says it very well, but it's the idea that, everyone grows tomatoes, yet the tomato business is thriving. The market for tomatoes, everything it's huge. People buy tomatoes year round, yet every summer people grow their own tomatoes, but you're still, even in the summer, I'm still going to the store when there's not a tomato coming off the vine. The amount of people growing at home don't affect the economic viability of growing tomatoes on a commercial scale, I think is 100%. The best way to say it.
Yeah. Well, fantastic, guys. If you could make a change to the current medical laws here in Missouri, what would be the biggest one you would change?
Plant counts.
Plant counts.
100%.
Awesome.
Yes.
Higher plant counts?
Plant counts.
Yeah, higher plant counts. Of course.
Higher plant counts.
Yeah. How about you, Adam? What would you change?
Plant counts, bro.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Nothing else?
I think that I would just the incredibly high bar to get into the commercial side of it is what I would change. Yes, I agree. Plant counts would be good, but it's not necessarily. Maybe some hybrid, like in Oregon. When I lived in Oregon, if you were a home grower and you tracked your herb, you could sell it to the dispensaries.
Yeah, I would like to see something.
Yeah, and so that's like, maybe keep it how it is with your only 60 cultivators that are like commercial businesses, but then, maybe up the plant counts and allow people to sell small batch, backyard boogie to the dispensaries too. And in Oregon, you were required to use the same tracking system, the metrics. And if you tracked it by metrics and had the tags and everything, you could sell it to a dispensary. And I think that's good for competition. It keeps the bigger guys honest. And then that also, it's inevitable that there are going to be more licenses issued and such, and it just kind of like microbreweries, like the cream rises to the top, and so if people are able to sell to the dispensaries, pretty soon people are going to be like, well, when are you going to start producing on a commercial level, because your stuff is so
Yep.
and then the new people coming into the game are almost pre-vetted. I think it's kind of a good cycle. So combination between plant counts and allowing people a path into the commercial,
And definitely allowing, more small mom and pop shops to have an opportunity.
So with obviously the insane demand and running out in 36 hours here in Missouri, do you think that it's possible for legislation to come back around and say, hey, let's go ahead and do a second round of vetting people through and then licensing new people? Or are they going to just take the hundreds of court cases and litigation cases and go, hey, guess what? You scored high enough already. You guys go ahead and here's your license.
I think that would be, I think the score that they already had, I think is what they'll go with. I don't think they'll have somebody come in a second round. They might. But, the numbers are already there. So I think they would kind of go off those.
Yeah.
So honestly, to me, I feel like that's kind of controversial because the scoring was the issue,
The flaw,
with the whole thing. And so I talked to numerous growers who, like me, have had a certain amount of growing experience, and we answered these questions knowledgeably, and with throwing in things about sustainability and this and that, and got low scores. And people who wrote industrial farm models got high scores, and it didn't seem to people on the inside of the cannabis scene, it really seemed backwards, like they had a lot, and so I think you're right. For convenience sake, they're not going to rescore it, but I think that it was flawed to begin with, so using those scores is going to be always a sore spot for some people, in that they feel like they weren't scored right in the first place. And not to mention, so I was in a group that we put 5 licenses in, and a lot of, when you put 5 licenses in, they ask a lot of the same questions, and so you take time developing these questions, and you resubmit the same questions on each application, because you're not going to write a fresh new answer 5 times, and we got varying scores on the exact same answers across 5 applications. And even in the dispensary category, we had 3. We were in for 3 dispensaries. We put the same thing. We got a 4 here, a 7 here, a 0 here, a 4, a 7, 7, 4.
Wow.
There was no rhyme or reason. It wasn't standardized in any way. So a real problem with the scoring. I think they were like the old too clever by half on trying to make it so airtight that anyone's going to say that it just became obtuse and flawed. And I don't know how to get away from that in Missouri. Hopefully, Kansas, I know, is thinking about doing this, and hopefully it's a much more direct. It needs to be much less ambiguous and much more direct if they're going to be doing a same sort of scoring a group of people and awarding to the people with the highest scores. There definitely needs to be some kind of, allowances made for not being like Missouri. I don't know if there's a worse place in the country for controversy over the results of the situation.
Which hopefully, like he was saying about, answer the same question, the same. Hopefully they'll take the highest number from that and keep that, and then use those numbers.
Definitely. I was at an expo, the Arclitech Expo show in Arkansas, and this is 3 years into them. I've already been licensed. Nobody was up and operational yet because of all the litigation problems they had. And I don't think any state has done it correctly, but everyone's trying. So, maybe Missouri didn't do it correctly at all, or maybe, it was flawed definitely, but I'm happy to see it. I'm hoping for something like that in neighboring state, Kansas. If there's always hope, but going forward, what would you like to see if there's any amendments to the laws? What would you like to see that be in Missouri?
Amendments to the laws?
I'm super unfamiliar with the current law, even. I'm a terrible person to ask these questions to personally. So
What do you mean exactly?
So
he's probably the closest.
Yeah, I guess the question's a little ambiguous. What do you mean amendments to the laws, amendments to the program?
Moving forward, if you could amend something in the current medical model that they have, what would you amend it and why? Besides plant count, I'm talking about, moving forward, it's, hey, you can apply for a bigger license for yourself. You can become a caregiver for more than just 2 people.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
The other thing, the ability for mom and pops to sell 2 dispensaries, I think would be an incredible option for anybody really. That's a potential way for people who are down and out to make extra income, or to somehow subsidize their lives. Everybody who has grown at home knows that chances are every 3 or 4 months you're getting more than you can technically use on your own. And in 3 or 4 months you're going to get more again that you probably are going to have extra of. And it would just be a great opportunity for people to make a little bit of side income. I understand that would create all kinds of issues as far as like tracking and making sure that you're getting clean products, and I'm not sure who would have to bear the brunt of the cost of testing for those. I'm assuming that the individual would probably have to pay for testing. But, if the individual has enough extra meds, they can probably afford to pay for the testing and make a little extra money off of it, and maybe even build their own personal like mom and pop brands. Maybe you could have a little co-op of a few dudes who are just really skilled at what they do, and their particular brand in the mom and pop or in the big chain shops is maybe like some of the top tier. Like when you go to the store and you buy a box of wine, or you buy $100 bottle of wine, there's a difference there. There are different wineries. Some of them produce massive amounts of okay quality stuff that'll work well at a party, and then there's
Franzia.
Yeah, exactly. Your box wine versus your more gourmet items.
I think, thinking from a legislative standpoint, there's a lot of tax money being left on the table to the black market. I mean, just honestly, and one of the reasons that the wave of legalization is coming across the country is that they're like, well, can we get these people into a legalized market, get it accountable, get it taxable and everything, to the point where there's provisions in all of the programs where they essentially, like the Immaculate Conception is the idea that they're not going to ask you for 90 days where you get your seeds and clones and everything. That's all programs have this. And that's because they want the really good black market people to become legitimate. And then once those people, and the idea that the mom and pops could sell to the dispensaries or to the recreational, however it goes, just is another opportunity to keep the product from being diverted into the black market and keep it taxable, keep it accountable through testing, just that whole situation. And as someone who's seen all of the markets and I mean, people are happy to be able to not worry about their doors being kicked in. They're like my buddy out in Oregon that's doing it now. He said, I could if I could sell this for twice as much on the black market, and I wouldn't have to deal with regulations and I wouldn't have to deal with taxes. But the peace of mind of being able to do this, upright citizen, not hiding in the shadows, is worth not making the kind of profits that other people used to make. So I think that's something that from a lawmaker's standpoint, they need to remember that it's good for everyone when we can get the black market folded into the regulated legal market.
That is a great way to frame that argument.
That is.
I like that. I'm real selfish. I wouldn't have thought of coming at it that way.
Well, I mean, but all of the programs have had it. Yeah, all the programs have had an element of that, and it's just being realistic. It's just being on the ground and being realistic about what's going on. Because California, I think California, even though they have a massive recreational market, are still the black market's still 3 or 4 times larger. But they've also have a Byzantine maze of regulations and taxes and issues, and not to mention the fact that the federal government doesn't allow you to take small business deductions, which is crazy. You pay so
Absolutely.
much, so much money. Little things like that keep people in the black market, and I think if the smart bet by the government would be on getting as many people into the taxable, accountable structure as possible, and by doing things that's happening in Missouri, where you have a very high bar, very difficult to get in. It's almost like they want the black market to thrive.
Right.
Oklahoma
had I liked how they did it. I like how Oklahoma did their medical implementation. It was very loose. It was also really easily attainable to get a license. Right.
And the patients the market's going to be spoken for by the patients. Like they're going to find that craft cannabis they're looking for, and be like, I'm not going to go for the commercial when I know that I can, go to this guy, and his quality is way better. Like, they're going to speak for themselves.
Well, that's obviously already going to be happening here. Like, we're just leaving the door wide open for the next 2 years for black market growers to just crush the dispensaries because quality isn't up yet, and they're running out on the first weekend.
Pre-grown eights.
Yeah, $60. Oregon really did it well. Oregon was one of the earliest medical states in '98. And Oregon and Washington both went in '98. California went in '96. But Oregon had kind of a similar thing to the Oklahoma model, but there was a limit. So it was kind of like every locality, every municipality made their rules about how many they could limit. Some people said 1, some people said unlimited, but for the most part, it was like we're going to have 3 dispensaries here. But the bar to entry was, get your business license and then pay $5,000 or something. I mean, it was not onerous to the point where the second year of the recreational in Oregon was people went out of business because there were $300 30% outdoor, 30% THC outdoor pounds, because and that's balanced out now. But that's what happens in you get these more open markets, and there's going to be a initial, all these people put a huge amount of money into their businesses, and then they have to get something out of their herb, and then you get a race to the bottom, and then a certain amount of people go out of business, and then you start to see the prices come up and kind of more stabilize once that first initial thing, because a lot of people that don't know what they're doing get involved, and they thought that it was just going to be like, oh, here we go, it's easy money. I was approached by a group in Kansas, and they showed me the numbers that someone presented to them, and it was like every single number on their pro forma was best case scenario. And you can't
plan for the worst.
You cannot, and this is a group. I moved forward with this group, and we revised everything and started. Yeah, you have to plan for the worst. If you plan for the worst, then when the bottom drops out of the market, you're not panic selling, which drives the tailspin of the market. So I think that the Oklahoma model is one extreme, and say like the Missouri model's the other extreme, and there's probably a sweet spot in between those two, a little closer to the Oklahoma model, but that I think the innovation in Oklahoma is fantastic. Oklahoma was hurting for money. They're just like, we'll do anything we can to get money. And so, a lot of breeders have moved down to Oklahoma, all this, but someone was pointing out the other day that no one has seen any real quality cannabis come out of Oklahoma. And when I say come out, like pictures or anything it's all some small, there's some people doing it,
yeah.
But Oklahoma's not known for quality, because there's so many people, it's like anyone could do it. Anyway, people have a garage out back growing their herb, and their front room is their dispensary.
Yeah, like there's no regulations, in the grow, as far as what you spray on your plants.
Would you show me a picture of?
Oh yeah, there's a picture on Instagram of a girl smoking a cigarette in the flower room.
Oh my gosh!
This is a commercial grow. And it's like there's literally no regulations. They're going to hydroponic shops and picking up pesticides, and they're pushing Eagle 20.
Oh my goodness!
Like it's nothing. Like, yeah, just spray it on there. And these growers are online saying, "Oh, everything's gone. Look at my plants." And it's like, do you realize what you just sprayed on your plants? Like, just because you can spray it, it's allowed to be sprayed, doesn't mean you should spray it. Yeah. Live by the expectations of a state that's already set organic rules. And use those pesticides.
Right. But then you also get into there is a problem with cannabis in that the labeling for pesticides in cannabis is there are very few pesticide and herbicide and fungicide makers that have put the time and effort and money to get their stuff labeled by the EPA. So there's only there's 1/100th or 1/1000th of the available products in cannabis that there are in other industries. So that's challenging or problematic in and of itself. I don't think Eagle 20's labeled for cannabis.
No. There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah. So,
do you guys think it would be beneficial if a state like Missouri were to implement the exact same regulations and rules like the EPA and the FDA into the cannabis sector, but on a state level?
Do we think it would be?
Yeah, it would be beneficial, obviously, but do you think the benefits would say, because somebody is going for that commercial grow, they're going to smoke that or ingest that somehow, and then they're going to have now taken a poison like Eagle 20 into their body.
Neurotoxin, just straight to the dome.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Oregon, Washington, most of the big states that are doing it, they if it's not labeled, it's just like every other industry. If it's not labeled for your crop, you can't use it. And if they find out that in testing that you've been using one of those, they'll pull all your product, and then that can be pretty ruinous in a high competition environment. So,
That's why testing is so important.
Right.
True testing,
Yeah, and then we get the thing where they require testing, yet they slow walk, or there's something, I don't know what's going on in Missouri. There's one testing lab open now, maybe two.
Green Precision is one here. I think there's two, one in KC and one in St. Louis.
Right, and they issue a low number of licenses for testing, like 5 in the
Yeah,
state.
it was ridiculous.
Something ridiculous like that.
These facilities are going to have to be huge in order to process all that material.
Right, yeah, and instead of having a broad spread of testing agencies, just to make sure that everything that comes out can be tested, this is a perishable product.
Yeah, that's really goofy. They should have it. There should be more, just so that there's more in each sort of municipality.
Yeah, the speed with which you get it from harvest to the consumer is important for quality. It just is.
Especially when you're pre-packaging.
Yeah, God, are we doing that in Missouri?
That's what that's how the issues came up.
Oh yeah.
Because the Soul House prepackaged it, and then they sent it to the dispensaries, and you
can't check
at that point it's not the dispensary's fault. Yeah, like until you purchase it, you can't open up the container.
Wow.
So is that how they got their mold issue? Is that the company that had all the moldy bud?
The whole thing is that
it was one strain, LSD. And they batch tested. They went back and looked at all the testing, and the results came back negative. So it could have been this was stored here, and
Well, it could have also been in a large grow.
it was rushed. You didn't dry it correctly. You didn't cure it correctly.
That's the thing. You're only sending what? How many grams do you send off for a sample?
A pound. I think it's a pound. Isn't
Okay,
it?
so 1 pound out of 50 pounds or something.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
10% of that could have mold, and you could miss it in that 1 pound.
Too low of a sample size.
Yeah. Or just and
Well, that's why it's so important, that when we are testing, we're having a private company come out, take the sample from the plant, and pre-test it. That way we have kind of an idea of what we're going into with each strain.
So many tweaks needed.
Yep.
Awesome, guys. So my next question is going to be, and I'm just going to go around real quick. Ricky, why is cannabis important to you?
Cannabis it's been something that I've been able to not take pharmaceuticals, not take depression medication or anxiety medication. It's gotten me off of, in my 20s, I was drinking all the time. I was, and I've gotten to the point where, I consume cannabis and tinctures, and it makes, I feel amazing, in comparison. So it's definitely shifted my life in a way, not only health-wise, but my passion and my hobby has shifted, to helping others and seeing others benefit from cannabis.
That's fantastic. Toby, same question.
Gosh, it's really, when I was younger, it seemed weird that I would consider it my lifestyle. And to me, what I like about it is it sort of represents a counterculture, a counterpoint to the dominant corporate culture that we have, a counterpoint to the capitalist mentality that we see in America. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with capitalism, but it should not dominate. It's part of a system. It's not the system. And there's something about the experience of living in the cannabis culture and living with a cannabis lifestyle that allows you to take a step back from that and take it as it is instead of it dominating you. So for me, it's about the fact that there are other ways to see the world and other ways to live, rather other than that which has been spoon-fed to us by our dominant media. To me, the medicine aspect of it is amazing. The recreational aspect of it is amazing. I say all the time, all cannabis use is medical, because if you are taking a substance to feel better, that's medical. Like, we can call it recreational if you want, because I want to watch this. I want this movie to be a little more interesting. But when you get down to it, you're taking it to feel better. And so there's something about the all-consuming. I mean, I'm kind of a zealot, honestly. I'm very into. I'm a big advocate of all of the uses of cannabis. The fact that it is. it's just a huge thing, and it's not all consuming like, say, heroin or meth, something that consumes your life. I mean, there's a million ways you can take it. There's a million benefits you can get from it. So it's hard for me to say any one thing. I went to college in a time and place that it was very prevalent, and ever since then, it's just been part of my life. And so I just can't imagine life without it. I guess that's what I would say the most compelling thing about it is that it is truly part of my life.
Nice. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, for me, where do I start? I love cannabis. Its meaning to me is multi-level, right? So it's good for so many different things. Like Toby was saying, I mean, it is medicinal, clearly. It's definitely recreational too. Everything can be abused, obviously. So there is definitely a risk for that, but people who are going to abuse things are going to abuse things no matter what. And we can't control that. That's for them. That's for you to be responsible for yourself and all that. Really, cannabis to me, I see it as a teacher drug. I see it as a way to shift consciousness. I see it as a way to relieve stress. I see it as a lot of different things. It's a lot of different things for me. Obviously, I deal with chronic pain. I manage it that way. I have a lot of neck and shoulder issues because of years of weightlifting and just kind of beating myself up. And I have type 1 diabetes, which causes a lot of other issues, potential nerve damage, ocular pressure that cannabis can help to sort of maintain. There's a lot of, I see it as preventative maintenance, honestly, for a lot of the hazards in the world today. We live in a highly toxic world. Everything can give you cancer. THC and CBD both have been shown to kill certain cancer cell lines and cause apoptosis. So to me, it's a way, it's just so many different things. Like I said, it can be preventative maintenance. It can be, you just want to watch the game with your buds and have a relaxed time without being incapacitated or, under the influence of something where you're going to lose control of yourself. Cannabis, no matter how much you consume of it, I've never seen anyone, I've seen people have panic attacks and I've seen people lose it, but I've never seen anybody just totally ruin their lives because of it, Well, I take that back. People ruin their lives a lot of different ways. Sure, some people will use it as an excuse to just not do anything and not progress. But chances are those people were going to do that anyway. So, can't blame cannabis on that, right? But yeah, it's just a bunch of different things to me. It's an incredible substance, and I wish everybody would at least indulge in it every once in a while. Like, everyone can benefit from it in some way. So
I agree in that, because I've had some pain of my own, and just having a topical cream helped relieve that immensely. Something that
Yep.
I didn't want to take. I don't want to keep taking ibuprofen or
Yep.
harder drugs and continue to ruin my body in that way, when I could put this medicinal thing on and feel a lot better.
Like, it helps so much with, so as a type 1 diabetic, I have to deal with something called the dawn effect, where while I'm asleep at night, my blood sugar creeps up because my liver is just pumping out glucose, preparing me for the following day, right? There's nothing I can do about it. I haven't eaten anything. I've been asleep for 7-8 hours at this point, but 4 or 5 in the morning rolls around and my blood sugar just shoots up no matter what. So if I don't think to set an alarm in the middle of the night and take an injection to deal with that high blood sugar that I will inevitably have while I'm asleep and have no recourse for it, I wake up with really bad nausea. And it's just kind of the side effect of high blood sugar, or the type of high blood sugar that it can potentially get to. So, it's a great way to deal with nausea. Like when you wake up and that's why cancer patients have been using it for a long time, just nausea reduction and appetite stimulation, which I don't necessarily need help with that, but the nausea reduction, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Nate, same question.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting piece of earth. It's something I really, I've been fascinated with for a while. I haven't needed it for much. I have slight tremors in my hand, and that does help with that. But it's really, I'm looking in to study it just to study it and to see what else is in it. There's so much that is just untapped. I view it kind of like the ocean. We haven't had the time or energy resources to be able to discover it a little bit more. And dig a little deeper, see what the socioeconomic effects are on society, and then maybe even more so what it can do to the body over time as well, just to see what that looks like. So I've always been fascinated with that study, and so that's really my focal point of getting into it. And yeah.
Fantastic. For me, guys, it is basically a passion I've had since I was young. And I'm talking 12, 13, I was a rebellious kid, grew up in kind of a rough situation. And then over time, I realized that cannabis that I was using for an escape in my childhood was actually helping me in other ways, and not just mentally, not drinking like you said, or helping with pain. And just, I see it as something that socially and economically could benefit our society and all society. And if we didn't demonize it and hate it and try to regulate it so heavy, we'd be so much further as a society with using topicals, and we'd have a better understanding of exactly how it functions. I'm a big advocate for not just state legislation, but federal legislation as well, because I want to see it decriminalized. That is my passion. I want to be there when that happens, and that's pretty much my whole life was kind of like, oh, I really want this to happen. Well, then I realized one day I was like, I got to do something and go my hardest on that just to try to be better. Now, I used to smoke a lot. When I had my kids, I really dumbed that down, and I started focusing on other parts and aspects of life, which putting everything together, everything is a melting pot. So putting everything together, I am now who I am, and I'm sitting here with you fine gentlemen having a blast doing this. And yeah, thanks for entertaining me on that question. I had that down, and I always ask people that. So, but yeah. Anything else you guys want to talk about, or you just guys want to ramble a bit?
Well, I think, with the looming question in Kansas is what the bill's going to look like, what the legalization in Kansas is going to look like, because with Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, and Oklahoma going legal, it's only, you can only get so much in revenues busting people driving from one legal state to another legal state. That's a dead end. You can only get so far on that, and I'm very confident that something's going to happen in Kansas, and I think it was 30 years after Prohibition before we legalized adult consumption of alcohol in Kansas. So we have a long history of being sort of last of the dance on this sort of thing, and I would hope that we're not going to do something like that with legalization in Kansas, and maybe Kansas for a while was known as a very progressive place. Eisenhower came from here, who was an amazingly progressive Republican president, especially in retrospect. I don't know. there's a lot of information out there about what's happened in the different states. The nice thing about being almost the last one is that we can look at what's happened in the other states and pick and choose what we want to do and see which ones worked well and which, like, obviously we don't want to do the Arkansas model or the Florida model. The Florida, there's 17 producers or something in Florida. Florida has like 20 million people in it. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. But these are all like sort of written in back rooms with blinders on, where people are just like, hey, we should do this, without just saying, why don't we look at the states where it's already been done and see what the impact is and what's happening. So I'm really hoping that something like that's going to come out of Kansas, where there's the good old-fashioned like Midwestern common sense comes into play, and we do something that benefits the state. Not just conservatives who think this, or not just liberals who think that, but really benefits a state that we could use some help in Kansas economically, culturally. We've been kind of stuck for a little bit, and I think that this is one way that we could really vault ahead. So
yeah.
Sort of excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, when I see my fellow Kansans and veterans suffering from either PTSD or cancer, and they have to drive to Missouri or somewhere else to get relief to that, or they have to use the black market, not that they want to, but they have to, right there you're demonizing, or you're hating on a group of people who really need help, and we're not being able to provide them that help. And that's something that I think as Kansas we need to look at and try to fix, as well as tax revenue, like you were saying. Instead of bagging somebody and ruining their life with legal problems and legal queries and taking them to jail, if we had a taxation on it that we could use to benefit our schools, put toward cleaner water, better infrastructure in the state, that's something that we could use extremely. We can use it now. We need that now. We don't need it in 30 years. But yeah, so.
What I think I think instead of rushing into any kind of legalization, I feel like each state needs to go through the process of medical, because then you kind of, you understand your system a little bit better, and you're not rushing in saying, all right, we know how to do this. And then you have an even bigger issue. Start with medical, get that implemented, and then, work your way into recreational.
It's been interesting. So the synonym mix-up that we've been having to implement it's been interesting to watch how that plays out. Like, so when we talk with some people and we say adult use versus recreational, it has implies a different meaning to them. So it's like when we say recreational, they think of a bunch of kids getting down and sitting high, or sitting down and getting high. But when we say adult use, it implies responsibility. And so they view it in a whole different light, and then there's all of a sudden so open to the economic benefits that help offset the economic calamity.
That's interesting, yeah.
Semantics.
Yeah, and that has a huge effect on these people.
That's so goofy to think about, but yeah, when you suddenly phrase it that way, it's like, oh yeah, I guess alcohol is an adult use thing. I do that all the time.
Right, but recreational alcohol use is like slamming beers in the parking lot of the Chiefs. Like seriously, when you think about it, like recreational is like going out and like fishing or doing water skiing. Like water skiing is recreation, like to put it that way, that does I think that it's just there's these words that they've used in the places where it was 14 years in Washington from the time they started their medical till they got their recreational. And Washington and Colorado both went recreational at the same time, adult use. But they called it recreational, and that's very interesting to because words matter. That's why I don't say marijuana. It's cannabis, and I would love to see, man, how amazing would it be if it was like the state cannabis board. I mean, every single state says it's the marijuana board and everything. It's just like, and that just doesn't give me a good feeling that it's that they're moving forward very much. It's always just little things like that. I guess I know it so well with those two words. I should think about that with adult use and.
It's just been interesting. And that was advice given to us by our lobbyist. And he's like, look, don't talk like this, talk like this. Use these words, not these words. It's interesting because they really do have an effect on the mindset and how they're viewing the conversation completely. So it becomes so much easier to sort of like swivel in the idea of how much economic benefit this could offer the state.
It's so funny. I'm so bad at things like that. I am so just like a blunt instrument when it comes to a lot of things. I got to be better about that. You gave me the visualization of like a Chiefs game, tailgating.
Yeah, it was great.
Passing around joints instead of beers.
Yeah.
And that led me to think like how much quieter the crowd would be probably.
The quietest stadium in the NFL.
There is quite a bit of that kind of tailgating going on there, but also very strong beers. So I don't
Yeah. Sure. Getting twisted.
I think that, so in Kansas, our deficit's growing immensely. We're, what, 2 billion in the hole?
Yeah, we're about $2 billion in the hole.
We're about 2 billion in the hole.
The state's pretty much insolvent.
We shouldn't be that way. That's, if you're thinking about a business, I think bankruptcy at this point. And then we have Boeing, and of course with the Boeing problems with their aircraft and all that, we started subsidizing for the airlines, and it hurt our jobs and our economy. And people don't think all this stuff is economics. And when we talk about it, we want people to live better lives and feel better, not just through use of marijuana, but just in general. The legalization of marijuana, cannabis. You got me saying marijuana. The legalization of cannabis in Kansas could just be so beneficial and bring jobs and economic growth. And instead of limiting it to 3 testing sites or 5 testing sites and, only 60 growers, let the market be free.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking to a free market capitalist right here, brother. I want everything to be like that. I want everything to be wide open. I don't want
McDonald's.
I like the concept of the consumer having control over their own decisions. And, if I want to buy the shittiest product because that's the money that I've got, I'll buy the shittiest product because that's the money that I've got. And if I want to buy the finest, I'll buy the finest. And,
See, but you should be able to buy the finest all the time.
Well, yeah.
Of course. There should always be quality product. A dispensary should always offer a quality product at all price points, not just the highest price point.
Yeah.
But there's ways to offer your top product in different tiers.
Yeah. I shouldn't have phrased it that way. Like I said,
No, that's what they do.
So I think that when a new Taco Bell opens up in Colby, Kansas, it's a big deal. That's like 15 new jobs.
Yeah.
And there's when you get west of Manhattan, essentially, you start to get into places where their populations have been declining steadily. There's very little economic opportunity, and just the idea that put a dispensary in, out in one of these places, and those are good jobs.
Yeah.
Those pay pretty good. They get tips, and as time goes on, they get benefits. These are, and none of those places have one of those. So there's opportunity to take this industry and put it in these places, and there's amazing farmland out there. And also, there's just a lot of that going on. So I think in Kansas, there's a lot of opportunity to do this, not just in Kansas City, not just in Lawrence, not just in Topeka and Manhattan and Wichita, like the little towns out in the middle of, well, I wouldn't say nowhere, but the little towns out on the prairie,
when you're talking about Colby and Hayes and all those towns that you're driving through between here in Colorado.
Exactly. Yeah, that are just like, there are 2 exits, but the only reason there are 2 exits is because you can go into one side of town on one and out the other side, and they're a mile apart. They're 2 miles apart, and half of that is driving on a country road if you get off on those exits. I think there's a lot of benefit, just that alone, that if a Taco Bell opening up is exciting, then this is a better job. These are,
especially if it's a cultivation site.
Can you imagine once those Diplo and type, like what you were talking about?
Triple height,
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
like
rabbit hole.
The future could be really interesting with all that farmland and the new types of breeding that's happening.
And seed production and even seed production and fiber production is more profitable than a lot of the traditional agricultural industry.
Yeah, there was a period in Kansas in the 1800s where it was a top hemp producer in the United States. And imagine how much job and processing plant jobs can come into the state at that level. And of course, you're not just talking about employing people and giving them a better life, you're also talking about paying taxes that will help. Now, we did pass the hemp bill a few years ago. Unfortunately, there's been a problem with some testing over there. And I think that that's something that the private sector can fill in the jobs, and capitalism, free market can come in and actually provide the solution. And like you said earlier, there could be 100 breweries and people will find the best ones. The cream will rise at the top.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, are you done talking yet, or?
We're never. Don't say that. We'll keep talking on that. But, we probably in the interest of brevity for the first podcast, we might want to save some of this for future episodes, and maybe focus. Maybe have a little more focused topic matter in the future.
We were all over the board on this one, which is good. Kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah, so. Getting our feet wet.
Yeah, it gets everybody's opinions out there.
Thanks for the invite, guys.
Yeah, definitely, gentlemen.
Yes,
we're really
thank
happy
you.
to have you. And I believe that the next few podcasts here, we're going to be diving deeper into like different phenotypes, producing, tent setups, other stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
I like that.
Really, really juicy topics. I know this one wasn't too juicy. There's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but you guys, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Ricky Starling, Toby Hayse, Adam McGill, Nate Ramaley, Phillip Snodgrass. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Rock and roll.
All right.
That was good stuff.